Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast with Ron and Kristin, where leadership meets entertainment. This podcast features stories with names and certain aspects that have been changed to keep submissions private. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Dirty Side of Leadership podcast, where leadership meets entertainment. In today's episode, we will teach you how to dial in your decision-making process, your DMP. By the way, this is one of the many presentations that we offer through Forward Operations. If you or your company is interested in this presentation or any other dynamic leadership or wellness presentations that we offer, please visit our website and let's chat about it. All right,
Absolutely.
Ron, you down with DMP?
Yeah, you know me.
We couldn't not do that.
See, Kristin's cheesy as well. She put that in the notes.
Yeah, I did. I have it in me to be a little cheesy.
If you're really young and listening, there's an old song. You down with OPP? Yeah, you know me. All right.
Yeah.
So I guess some people are wondering why decisions, why DMP, decision-making process. And many times we don't even think about that. But Kristin, through the years, and this particular presentation I've done for a lot of people, but I started putting this together for my book. So I don't know how many people I've interviewed, and it's unbelievable how sporadic. When I would ask someone, how did you decide to do that? They didn't know. They don't have a process. So in other words, either some people just decide they want something based on an impulse, or they just make a decision because of other influences, like what other people want them to do. So I began to see a need of having a specific DMP or decision-making process. So in here, we're going to be talking a little bit about some processes that you can use. We really want to help on this. We're going to talk about internal awareness and external awareness. We have to be aware of the things around us, but we also have to be aware of our own capabilities, our own personality, things like that. And I've said this before, but one of the things we like to leave people with training is to get that PhD in you, study yourself, understand yourself. And at the end of this, please don't go anywhere. I guarantee you're going to walk away with a little practice. You're going to be able to make better decisions and understand why you made some poor decisions. Right. Kristin?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that's incredibly important that we understand why we've acted a certain way our entire life and how we can tweak it.
Yeah.
So something you may ask yourself, and I think we would all, the knee jerk would be yes, but are decisions important? And this is really wild. So, and I actually fact checked you on this one, Ron, so don't be offended. But so people may find it wild to know that on average, humans make up to 35,000 decisions on a daily basis. Literally, I saw that and I thought 35,000 was a typo. I kid you not. I went on to 3 different sites and it said it all across the board there. So then when I started really thinking about it, so it's 2,000 decisions per hour and 1 decision every 2 seconds. But when you're looking at examples on what makes up this 35,000 decision in a day, I mean, it's insane to me, but it's as simple as blinking your eyes, swallowing. Am I going to look right? Am I going to look left? Right? So it's every single move you make or thing you say is a decision that you've made. Now, some decisions are automatic, like I said, blinking, swallowing, but others are decisions that you are making through a decision-making process, through a DMP. And, it can vary depending on your definition of decision-making. For example, was that nose picking a conscious choice or more of an unconscious reflex? That's your decision. I would say it would be more of a conscious choice, right? And I highly recommend using a tissue and not being around people. But some people would just argue, they just go for it up to the second knuckle, and they say it was an unconscious reflex. And hey, you may want to, if you're that person, you may want to really listen to this podcast and take some notes. Life is a matter of choices. This is a great quote. Life is a matter of choices, and every choice you make makes you. That's John Maxwell. That says it all right there.
Yeah, exactly. And Kristen, we've referenced my book many times. Of course, we named the podcast after the book.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 100 DLs or dirty lessons in there. And I thought it was really relevant. DL 20 says, when that little voice inside your head is telling you this is a bad idea, it's usually right. Sometimes
Yeah.
small decisions can have a large impact. Don't forget, decisions determine destiny. And I think back in my life, some of the bad, like the poor decisions I made really down deep, I knew it was a bad decision. I
Right.
knew it going into it, but I did it anyway. So by developing a decision-making process, you have to learn to have those boundaries and to listen. They call it a sixth sense.
Mm-hmm.
sense. And police officers are trained this way. You get this feeling in your gut that something isn't right.
Right.
And more times than not, that's probably true. So there's something to that. And we'll talk a little bit more about ways to pick up on that other voice that's
Mm-hmm.
talking to you.
Right, right. I mean, sometimes I wonder how I even survived my late teens, early 20s with some of the bad decisions I've made. And it's just so wild. So, yeah, follow that
Do you
gut
want to discuss
instinct.
some of those, Kristen?
I know. I'm
I
like,
mean, you have a
hey.
captive audience.
I know, the first one that actually comes to mind, and this is pretty crazy, but around like junior, senior year, I was hanging out with some local boys, and I was never into drugs or anything like that, but apparently they were. And one time, this is out in the country, but my girlfriends and we were riding in the back of one of their trucks, and turns out the driver happened to be on acid that day. And we were so scared in the back of the truck. And, you think back to, why did I even just jump in? One, did we even vet the driver, right? Like all these things that someone with a fully formed frontal lobe now would actually think about. But I think, thank you, God, for allowing me to live through that experience.
No
Like, it's
kidding.
just really insane. And then it just terrifies me for youth and for my own children. So, hey, we learn from those experiences and do what we can to make sure our kids are smarter than us.
So you heard it here, folks. Never get in the back of a truck with someone who's been taking acid.
Yeah,
Great
yeah,
advice, Kristen.
yeah. When they're
Great
yeah,
advice.
exactly. Oh, there's so much more, but I'm going to leave it there. All right. So, building a decision-making process, a DMP foundation, you want to go into these things here. So, I'll start with values. So, you want to ask yourself, does this jeopardize my belief system? Right. So, and that could be a number of things. We think of from an ethical standpoint. We even could think of it from a risk standpoint. So, what's your level of risk you're willing to accept? And does this jeopardize your personal belief system? So
Hey,
that's
Kristen,
really important. Yeah.
let me
Break
jump
it
in on
down.
this. When
Yeah.
you talk about values, let me give you
Mhm.
an example. Some people are very timid, and we'll talk about that. But
Right.
let's say your house is on fire, right? The immediate decision is, I'm not going to let my house burn down. You're going to call 911 or the fire
Mhm.
department, whatever. If you see someone hitting a child in a public place, you might make a decision to intervene. You would not intervene in any other situation, but you have a value of protecting
Yep.
children. Do you see how that
Right,
influences?
right.
But let's say that's just something small going on. You may not intervene. So it really, the situation dictates, but that's how your values kick in.
Right, right. And it's interesting, a perfect example of that. This went viral. It was in a Walmart, and a little 2-year-old boy was in a diaper only. And this is January, it's cold outside, and he's visibly shivering, cold, in this grocery cart. And so the Walmart employee is filming it. And then she did have another employee call the police because clearly he wasn't being taken care of. And so that did go viral. And to your point, like that was against that employee's value system,
That's
letting
right.
something like that go. Because if that's happening, I always say, if you see something in public, can you only imagine what's happening in private?
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Absolutely insane. So also another foundation step here is time. Is this choice worth my time? And I know, Ron, you have something you use about ordering food. Can you break that down?
Yeah, we will elaborate throughout, but there are so many decisions, Kristin, that we struggle over that we shouldn't. Let me ask you a question. Let's say you cooked dinner 2 weeks ago, and you had, we'll just say your parents coming over. I'm just using this as an analogy. You might worry and figure out who eats what. You go to all this extent, and then people come and everything goes fine. It's no big deal. And after the fact, you're like, why was I so worried about that dinner? Or, on your first day of work, think about this. We go through the closet. We look over everything. We're trying on clothes. We're ironing. We're doing all this. Now you can't even remember what you wore the first day. So what I help people do, and we hope to do on this podcast, is for you to decide, is this really worth my time? And once I got that across, and Kristin, early on, I don't know if I've told you this before, but I was doing, we were doing like lunch and learns. And I had started developing all this, but I didn't tell my staff that I developed it, right? Because I wasn't sure how I'd be accepted.
Right.
So I taught some of the things we're going to be talking about. And I explained that we over obsess over food. Like, have you ever been with your family and you go, where do you want to eat? Where do you want to eat? Where do you want to eat? My daughter and I used to go back and forth on that. My youngest daughter, Jansen. My oldest daughter, she's got a plan. So you start going back and forth, she's going to go, okay, let's go there to this place. Like she's always got a place.
Yeah.
So I started thinking about that. Why does she always have a restaurant ready and we don't?
Yeah.
So as I began to process that, I realized that, let's say, Kristin, that you and I were meeting for dinner, we're having a business dinner, and we both like pasta or Italian food, and we both like, let's say, Mexican food. Okay. Well, we are trying not to step on each other's toes. We want to make sure, that each person's satisfied. We might go back and forth over and over. Kristin, are you sure? You sure Italian's okay? Because I know you mentioned you like Mexican. Do you see what I'm doing here?
Right.
I'm stressing myself out over nothing. But what if I said, hey, Kristin, what about Italian food or this Italian restaurant? Your best response is, if you can live with that, sure, let's do that.
Right. Exactly.
Or vice versa. So what I hope to help people do is stop the stressing over something that's not going to matter in 2 days.
Right.
I remember getting a zit in high school on picture day. It was horrible.
Right.
I think I've mentioned that before. Or, worrying about what clothes you're going to wear every day, and it doesn't matter. And we're going to talk about ways to help you distinguish that. That's what I mean by order that food. Oh,
yeah.
One last thing. After I did this with the staff, I had a female that told me she always had to read the whole menu. It was like something since childhood.
Fun.
She doesn't even eat seafood and still read that part of the menu. Yeah. So when we went through these exercises, and there are some tabletops where you're just making a decision, you're deciding, is this important, not important? Does this have a long-term impact? We'll talk about that. But when she went through those exercises, I had no idea. I mean, they said they enjoyed this, but again, they didn't know it was my material and it was going in a book. On Monday, I'll never forget this. She comes running up to my office and she goes, "You're not going to believe this. I ordered food in 2 minutes. I've never done that in my life."
Wow.
So I was like, ooh,
I
think
that.
I'm onto something. I think I'm onto something.
Yeah, definitely. And with the food piece, back in October when I co-hosted a large event, I was picking up speakers from the airport. These are international, national speakers. And one of them, I was in charge of ensuring she was entertained and taken to and from airport, hotel, etc. And we needed to ensure that we got lunch and dinner. So in that case, I definitely had mapped out where to go. And so it depends on the scenario for sure. If it's just among friends and family, you might not need to put as much into it. And to your point, Ron, it's like I kind of did what you were saying your daughter does. It's like you have a place, you have a plan, and you go with it. And it does ease a lot of the stress, I would say.
It really does. Yeah. And I'm not saying there's not a time where you talk to that individual, make sure they don't have allergies or they like the type of food.
Right.
But you really can go back and forth forever on something that should take a couple minutes.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Another piece is the outcome. So, will this decision produce a positive or negative outcome? So,
Wait a
that's
minute.
important.
I've got a thought.
Yeah.
So you were thinking, if I get in the back of this pickup truck and this guy's hitting this, Kristin, what was the outcome? Well, you survived
I
apparently.
survived,
Okay.
but I did, it was funny because my girlfriends and I, we were like, how stupid. So all of us learned a lesson. We didn't know we were getting in the back of a truck. One, what kind of man lets three ladies ride in the back while the dudes are all up front, right? Like there was room. It's an extended cab. So one, that's a problem that we were even hanging out with guys that acted that way. Two, we didn't even know if the driver was of sound mind. So we lived and we never did that again. At least
Oh,
I
I'm
didn't.
sorry.
I can't
Everyone, I'm
imagine they
sure
did
you're like
either.
me. I can see little Kristin bouncing around the back of that truck and
Oh
the guy
my
on acid. All
goodness.
right,
You
we
know
better
what's
move
so
on.
funny? I have to say though, the two gals that were in the back of the truck with me, we have all been friends. Actually, there's four of us. We have been friends since kindergarten and we are still friends today. So I can attest to everyone is alive and well. But yeah,
That's
pretty
good.
wild. Bad
That's good.
decisions could have happened.
Yeah.
All right, another piece is risks involved. This is a funny one, but this is a legitimate issue that has happened, and it made headlines for quite some time. People were taking Ambien. That's a very popular like sleep. You take it when you have trouble sleeping, apparently, and you take Ambien, and then people were shopping on Amazon. And the next day, or the next 2 days, I guess it would be, they were getting all these packages and they had spent all this money on it, didn't have any recollection of it. So they were like, don't Ambien in Prime. I don't know if you remember that in the headlines at all, but that's the type of risk that can be involved when you make decisions that aren't fully thought through.
Yeah.
Pretty insane. Have you ever done Ambien in Prime? I can tell you I have not. I'd be the one that would definitely
back in the day,
buy way too many things.
I did acid and eBay, but it was so 80s.
Oh my gosh. Oh, goodness gracious. All right. Who is impacted? This is something else to consider. For Ambien and Prime, your wallet and potentially your relationship. But it is serious. So who's impacted when you're making these decisions? What else is impacted? Maybe it's not a person, maybe it's a thing, right? And then you always want to talk through with yourself the pros and the cons. So, like, for instance, when I decided to leave my career, I had to make a pro and con list. I think that's really smart to have. And so, there were a lot of pros, and the pros ended up outweighing the cons. And it's really important to be able to walk through that. An example of the pro is I'm going to be able to homeschool my kids, and my husband can work day shifts since he will have that flexibility, right? So I can do all these things with the family. The family has greatly benefited from it. And then in the beginning, when I first left there, you're going from the security of a salary to, when you're an entrepreneur, you don't always have that fixed salary, right? You don't.
Yeah.
And you have to, it's just a complete thought process switch. And, there's a moment there where you're going from, okay, I every 2 weeks, this check would roll in, and it's just very different. And so, that could be seen as a con, especially in the beginning, but it's really important to work through that.
Yeah. My oldest daughter, Haley, had 2 job offers, and, I, of course, had really put a lot into decision making, but we did start the old pros and cons list is a great way to do it. And we literally outlined the pros and cons of each job.
Mm-hmm.
Then we use some of the things that we are talking about, the long-term impact and so forth, to help her. And once we got there, it was pretty obvious what the decision should be, and she hasn't looked back, and it's worked out tremendously well. So we're not discarding the old pros and cons list.
No,
There's
not at
just
all.
more to it sometimes than just that, or a lot of times it's almost equal, and that's when you need some of these other techniques that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
So, you got some more on that, Kristin?
Nope.
Okay, so we talk a lot about childhood programs, so much that I'm going to give it only a few seconds. But you may have grown up in a home where decisions could not be made and people are going back and forth all the time. So you need to recognize it, break that pattern, and start becoming decisive. You can do it. Understand that journey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Next is other influences. And I tell people this all the time. They tell you, and I've had this happen to me, don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry. And that is so
Yeah.
true, Kristen. I went one day, I'm walking through those shelves and, it's just me and my daughter living here. And I look like I purchased stuff for four because
Yeah.
I was starving. But
Yeah.
don't underestimate the influence of your moods and your season of life. I'll tell you something else too. I've had times where I've been angry, I during the time when I'm not going to get into details, but I ultimately divorced, there was a period I went through that I was angry and I wasn't making good
Mm,
decisions.
right.
So if you've been hurt, if someone's hurt you, I've seen people who get out of a marriage and they go completely bonkers, just go
Mm,
crazy wild. When if they at least had a DMP or they had a friend that would say, hold on here. Whoa,
right.
you're
Yeah.
going to end up in the back of a truck taking acid if you do not slow down a little bit.
Just to clarify, I wasn't on acid, just the driver.
But you see how, as I keep
Yeah.
telling this, it's going to get better and better. It's the way it works. No,
Right.
I'm saying ask yourself, am I in a good
Yeah.
frame of mind to make this decision? I told someone not long ago, this was not an official coaching capacity, but this is a person that had just broken up with someone. They were hurt and they were going to go buy a new car. I said, do not do that. This is your hurt talk and you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
impress her, make her see what she missed out on. This was
Right.
a younger guy. And I was able to talk this person out of doing that. And it took a
Yes.
while because they were hurt.
Right.
Um,
Instead, go to the gym and get that post-breakup bod.
there you go. Yeah, exactly.
That's effective, so I've heard.
And then you've got anxiety, fear, excitement. Anxiety, people don't understand this, but you cannot have integrity without courage. So let's say, Kristen, that I'm trying to decide, like I've got to terminate someone. And in my mind, I know the right thing is to terminate, but actually I'm afraid to do it. So in my mind, I'm going to justify reasons to not terminate because I'm really afraid. Your
Mm,
lack of courage or your anxiety will actually affect your ability to make a decision because even though you know what's right, you're not going to decide because you got to act on the decision. Does that make
right.
sense?
Yeah, it does.
So, and then excitement. How many times we'll go back to purchasing a vehicle? Salespeople they got this game they play with you. They're going to focus on your monthly payment, not the cost of the vehicle. So
Mm-hmm.
what they want to do, they know walking in, and I've interviewed my cousin, Jeff, has told me, I can't say his last name because all the other car dealers might get mad at him, but he showed me their whole process and they automatically know that someone will go up to $100, at least 50 more than what they say they can afford when they walk in.
Mm,
So they do that. They focus on the monthly payment because they can get you up now 7 years on a car, paying on
right,
a car.
right.
So
Yep.
they prey on your excitement, your enthusiasm. And that's where we have to have a DMP. We have to have walked through what are we going to, give in? What are we not? All of that stuff. So anyway, think about the situation you're in. And then don't beat yourself up too bad. Sometimes you make bad decisions. And I'm playing right now, but think about this, Kristen. You probably did not get in the back of a truck with guys again. So the point is, you
Correct.
accept the fact you make a bad decision. And Kristen, I've got some that I would never tell on this podcast. You might even quit working with me.
Oh
So
my gosh.
I've made horrible decisions before, so I'm giving you a hard time. But when you do make a bad decision, learn from it. Don't beat yourself up.
Yes.
Learn from it and move on.
Right, right. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so we're going to break down internal and external, basically their personality styles. So I want you to visualize a circle divided in 4 equal parts, and 1/4 is expressive, 1 is the driver, 1 is amiable, and 1 is analytical. Now, the expressive is outgoing, the driver is task oriented, amiable is friendly, wants to help. And then the analytical likes charts and graphs, outcomes, and data. Now, Ron, I'm curious where you land on that and where you think I land.
Kristin, you and I would have landed differently had we not been in charge of people and managing. So what I
Right.
mean by that, number one, let's say pre-banking,
Mhm.
obviously you and I were both A and B.
Right.
And probably a little bit of C, but C's are more beta personality. They really, they're the person that will do all the work and they just want to be valued. So I think we have some of that. And by the way, when I show people the quadrant, the personality quadrant, people like to get in the weeds and say, you're going to have a little bit of all these or you can't survive as a human. Like
Right.
you can't go buy groceries without having a little bit analytical in you.
Right, exactly.
So that's what I have to explain to people. But you've got some of these that are more prevalent in your life. So for you, Kristin, I would say the A and B. What do you think? Am I close?
Yeah. And it's funny because I do have the C and D, like you said, like those are definitely there as well. And I do like graphs and data, but definitely A and B. So the expressive, which is outgoing, the driver, which is task oriented. Yeah, I would say you're spot on there.
So remember, Kristin, I was picking that before banking. I guarantee you, after you became a bank manager or a banker, you had to learn, especially the analytical part.
Yes,
You're crunching
really
numbers.
Good point.
You're doing So what happens is our surroundings affect our personality types.
Oh,
and it's done that our entire life. But let me tell you a funny story, Kristin, that I use in my training. I say, let's say we want to go to the moon. The first thing you want to do is you want to get that driver. That's the person that's driven. And you get them and said, I want you to lead this team. By the way, those are alphas. Those are the people, those are the leaders, the driver. I want you to lead this team and I want you to get us to the moon. We need to make a moon landing. The driver is going to be all over that, right? And you go to your expressive people and you say, hey, we need to raise money. We got to keep the team motivated. We need you to help out. We're going to the moon. Those expressive, outgoing people, they're social. They're gonna, they throw your parties. They're the life of the party.
Oh yeah.
Then you go to the amiable, and they are your worker bees. They're going to get all the part. They're going to work, man. They're going to build this rocket ship. So when I tell this in training, I always leave out analytical. So finally, you always get the overachiever in the room. They go, what about analytical?
Yeah.
I said, well, I've already showed you how to get to the moon. But if you want to get home, you better get that analytical person involved.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll get you back home. So they will have asked the questions that no one else would have asked. Like, that's great that, we can get to the moon, but how are we getting back? Where's the fuel? Where's all of this? So I love to have analytical people on my team because drivers make more mistakes, Kristin. A person with a driver personality, because they're going to keep it going. Let's rock and roll. They're the air fryers like me. They're not. But the analytical, they bake the cake. You know what I'm saying? They're going to think it all through, give it time to ruminate. And but here's a great, this is totally off the beaten path. But if you're a leader and you recognize these personalities and you can get them working together, the sky's the limit. I'm telling you, it's the moon and back. But the reason we put it in here, Kristin, is if you're listening to me right now, you have to know your own personality if you're going to start making better decisions, if you're going to be more direct, if you're going to be more decisive, then you got to know yourself. So if you don't know yourself, you're not going to be able to improve.
Yeah, spot on.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll tell you what. There's some other things that are really good about ways to keep your mind clear. And we're not going to go into wellness. But I can tell you this, Kristin, if I don't sleep, and you and I have talked so much about the amygdala that I'm embarrassed to bring it up, but I have done this so many times. I've got a routine. I'm sure everybody has a bedtime routine. One of mine is I put my screen on dim and I do a crossword puzzle because I'm totally locked in. I don't think about anything else. But here's the thing. Many times I've been unable to solve that puzzle And then the next morning, after a good night's sleep, I pick it up and I go, bam, 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 bam. The 3 or 4 words I
Right.
couldn't think of. So those are also things that are going to affect your decision making. We've already talked about your mood. We've talked about, acid. No,
C-
there are things that influences you, but your diet, your breathing techniques, your
mhm.
social intimacy, your faith, all of these things will help you make good, clear decisions.
Right.
And then we have to recognize the destructive patterns. If I can't ever pay my bills, then I'm making decisions to spend more than I bring in.
Right.
And this is where it gets serious. This is where you mentioned the impact on your family, on other parts of your life. And if any of those patterns, if you've got negative patterns, and one of the biggest ones, Kristen, and I'm going to pick on females a little bit only because I've coached more and heard more, but they will date a loser,
Mhm.
break up, and then go find another loser. And the
Yeah.
flags are the same. So
Right.
it's like a pattern of making the decision to look for this certain type. And they need time. It's like I strongly told, and I mentioned this before, a female I was coaching, like you don't need a man for like a year. And this person did make
Yeah.
it 8 months, and it went much better. So those are destructive patterns. The red
Right.
flags are see-through, apparently. They can't see those. Also, you have to know yourself. Do I have compulsive behaviors or impulsive?
Mhm.
And that will help you with your DMP. Then you got to look at your past, because your past can affect your future. If you're allowing it, you can project your hurts, pains, and all these other things right onto people. So this is a lot
Yeah.
that we're pouring out. We'll summarize it at the end. We'll put extra show notes this time, Kristen, because I'm sure we're going to have some listeners who really want to improve their decision
Yeah.
making process.
I have to tell you, with the compulsive behavior, I've shared in numerous episodes that I love shopping for clothes. Like, that is my thing. And lately, I'm really challenging myself. I don't know if you know about this, but it's basically where people don't buy anything in the month of January. I see this on social media every year. January, groceries, gas, bills, and nothing else. And I did that challenge and I've done very well. But yesterday I needed something for my class is doing a science fair, and I just needed some awards for them. And the Party City was right next to Nordstrom Rack, and that's one of my weaknesses. And my mom was like, "Oh, I need to return something. Let's run in there." And I was like, "No, I literally can't. I
Oh, that's
literally
good.
can't." And so then she basically was like, "Okay, I will go in by myself. You do what you got to do in Party City." And it's one of those things that sounds ridiculous, but I know I will go in there and it's like shiny thing. I
Yeah.
love clothes. And so I'm setting boundaries for myself, and it feels really good to be in control. So that's just something, just being humble here and sharing that, because I felt really good driving home knowing I didn't buy anything that wasn't on my list. And again, that is rare for me.
And that's part of the DMP, by the way. That is
Mhm.
part of it. You're recognizing something destructive. And Kristen, I
Right.
told everyone on this podcast that I was going to work on going to bed earlier.
Mhm.
And I've already missed a couple nights and I didn't feel good. I was mad at myself. I beat myself up. And man, it was so good when I was setting up. Now I
Yeah.
didn't go to bed as late as I have. There's been improvement, but it's still not great.
Right.
So I have to like refocus on that. I have to focus my DMP because I'm not getting the outcome that I want. The outcome is to feel great the next morning,
Right.
and I don't
Right.
get that. But I don't know why, Kristen, your goal to tidy up and be organized.
Mhm.
My daughter even mentioned to me, she said, "Thanks for like the stuff you do." And I think these new French doors inspired me, but I've been so neat.
That's
So maybe I
great.
took yours.
Yeah. Well, I might as well follow up on that. I've actually been completely on top of it, especially like upstairs, because that when we have guests over, that's the first place I'm going to put things so it's out of sight. But I've been making a conscious effort. Like when I'm getting ready in the morning, I put everything away. I put all my hair dryer, my curling iron, right? I'm putting it away. It's not laying on the
Yeah.
counter. I'm making my bed right. It's things. And then I go in, or even if I'm just walking past my bedroom, I look in and it just looks so nice and inviting. And so that conscious effort is really helping, and my husband's appreciating it too.
And you are celebrating a victory by just, even if it's I tell people a celebration don't have to be a party. It's that moment when you look in that bedroom and you're like, that looks good.
Exactly.
And I've been doing the same thing, but the biggest thing for me is doing it as I go. It's so easy. If I'm in a hurry, I'll throw stuff in the floor. I dress and I take off. I'm like, nope, it's going to take me 10 extra seconds to walk in the closet and put those shoes there.
Right.
It's going to take 15 seconds to get that pair of underwear off the ceiling fan and just go. Folks, I have to make sure Kristen's listening to me sometimes.
I am.
Hey, Kristen, let's go straight on to the traffic light philosophy, if you don't mind.
Sounds good. No, let's do it. Absolutely.
You take it.
You want me to take it? Okay, sounds good. So basically, the way it works, this is, again, when you're making decisions. Green, you're going to check in with yourself. Am I green? If you're green, go, baby. Yellow, proceed with caution. Red, don't do it. Red, again, I would say you feel that one in your gut. That's the gut instinct. Shouldn't get in the back of the truck, right? And now, because I am, my frontal lobe is fully formed, I'm an adult now, I won't do it. If it doesn't feel right, I'm not going to do it. And so you need to listen to that.
Exactly. I had a friend. She is one of our top listeners. And she called me yesterday. I always love to catch up with her. I know her husband. They live in one of the major cities. And there's a new job opportunity. And we walked through the pros and cons, but we also kind of went through the green, yellow, red light. And the beauty is some people call it instincts. Some people, they call it different things, that you're intuitive. But I do believe, and I told someone one time, they were trying to figure out where to buy a house, right? So I told them, I said, go to the location and walk around and see how you feel. And I kid you not, this person said, as soon as I walked in, I knew I was home. They'd never visited before. So there is some truth to all that. I'm not saying that you don't take a little more scientific approach to it, but there's truth. If you're getting that nagging feeling, then danger might lay ahead, or something else. So anyway.
Right.
Now, Kristin, as we've dropped a lot of information, but I do want to show there's 4 types of decisions that are widely accepted. The first one, let me just say them first: conceptual, directive, behavioral, analytical. And we're going to go kind of quick here, but let's say that in Portland, you guys have a trolley system and you and I want to bring it to Charleston. We think it's a moneymaker. We've already got the concept, but we got to see if it'll work well in Charleston, right? That's conceptual. We're not going to cover that for the purpose of this little exercise we're going to do. But directive is exactly like the driver. These people will keep the ship going. They make a lot of mistakes, but they'll keep it going. Behavioral, these people like a consensus, and there's nothing wrong with collaborating. You just got to know when to draw the line. And then you're analytical. We've already talked about. These people want all the data, charts, outcomes, facts, all of that stuff. So let's do a simple scenario. And you and I walked through this one other time, Kristin, but I'm going to be slightly more detailed.
Okay.
So you're at a restaurant with friends and everybody gets their food, but yours is cold. Okay. Do you A, send it back immediately? Do you B, talk with the group to see what they think you should do, see if their food's cold, all of that stuff? Or do you C, think about all the things that could go wrong if you send it back, like they might even tamper with it? What does your gut feeling tell you that you would A, send it back immediately, B, talk to the group, C, think about the things that could go wrong?
I'm going to go with C, because I don't think it would bother me enough to basically take the table off topic.
Okay, then based on that, think about it. You just mentioned the table, so that means there's some of the behavioral there. You care about what other people, you don't want to hold other people up.
Right.
You probably are a little bit directive because I think you saw this as a meeting maybe, or you didn't want to disrupt everything.
Right.
But as I told you, now that you've been in banking, you got some analytical. So what we need to do is look at pros, cons, and a call to action.
Right.
For any of these, and I know that is such a simple scenario, but you have no idea, Kristin, how many people will tell me they would be embarrassed to send it back. They don't want the group to think, and that's more behavioral. They're worried about how
Right.
their behavior will be perceived. And in all honesty, most of those people are amiable. They're not directive. They're not
Right.
leaders. They're a little more followers. It's just the truth. But I've
Right.
now done this. Now, when I first put it together, I beta tested probably 25, 30 people because I was putting in my book. Now it's been done with over 1,000 because I've done it in so many training things. And it's totally in line. You could use 100 different scenarios, but this pretty much tells you your approach. And I knew that you were going to hit all three because of the position that you held. But anyway,
Right.
here we go. If you're directive, you send that food back immediately. And I'm going to get you to cover one or two of these as well, Kristin, the next one, but I'll do this one. If you're directive, here's the advantages of your decision-making process. You're going to make quick, short-term decisions, which probably are needed. You're not going to waste a bunch of time. You're results-driven. You want a good result. And these people usually give good, clear directions. In other words, they might say, no, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it this way. Like they're clear. And they keep the agency moving forward. The cons is they may be too direct. They may forget about pleasantries. They may just say, go get that done instead of, hey, would you please,
Yeah.
They may not be sensitive to morale. They don't care. They're focused on the end goal. We're going to the moon. I don't care if you like it.
Right.
They may not collaborate. Sometimes they don't even respect other people's input. They are more prone to make emotional decisions. A lot of times, if someone's really directive, they get pissed off easily, or they move on their emotions more. They can make rash decisions, and we've already said they make more mistakes. Now, if you fit in that category, you're very directive. Here's what your call to action is, your CTA. You need to develop a system to know when to collaborate. In other words, you stop and think, could I use some input on this? You also need to think, do I need more data? Slow yourself down. Make yourself think, this is like going to the grocery store when you're hungry. Think, I'm starved. I know I don't need that. You remind yourself. Or you're sitting in the parking lot of Nordstrom and you know you shouldn't go in.
Right.
That's part of it. These people need to consider the impact on the staff. What's this going to do to morale if I make this decision?
Right.
And they need to remind themselves, use pleasantries when you are giving directives. Please and thank you still go a long way. It's universal. Now, Kristin, tell us if someone is behavioral. In other words, that's the person they always want to know what the other people at the table think. And I had someone that worked at a company, and they said that this CEO could not make a decision because he would want everybody to agree with him before he dismissed them. So they would lie and claim they agreed just to get out of the meeting.
Oh man, that's a CEO. That's scary.
Yeah,
But,
and it's a pretty major
wow.
company, let's just say.
Yikes.
Yeah.
So the behavioral style of decision making. So the pros are going to be they're good collaborators and they desire that majority opinion you were just talking about. They're not going to make hasty decisions. They consider staff morale. Some of the cons, they may be timid. They may struggle when making quick decisions or when quick decisions are needed. Decisions may cause internal stress. That's that second brain, right? That we talked about last episode. They're going to focus on others' reactions before making a decision. And they may wait too long, that analysis paralysis piece.
Yep.
They could wait too long to make a decision that's needed. And really the call to action for that personality type is to start making quick decisions when needed based on experience and gut instinct. Think of the organizational needs first and then accept the fact that it is possible to please everyone. And they've got to be able to overcome the psychological need to be loved, or that have that general consensus of everyone agreeing with their decision that they've made. The last personality type. So it's interesting. I'm thinking of Michael Scott in The Office again, but there's an Office episode where he thinks this guy's mafia and he's an insurance salesman.
Yeah.
And he was so taken by his directive style when they were ordering food at the Italian restaurant that Michael gets really inspired and he orders his once he tried to get a gabagool or something first and they didn't have it. But then he said, I want spaghetti with meatballs and I want the side salad on the side. If you put it on top, I'm sending it back. And it just made me think of that some people are really taken by that directive leadership style. But in this case, the personality type was Michael, who was always looking to be liked by everybody. And it's just such an interesting dynamic.
It really is. And food, like the way people conduct themselves in restaurants and at dinner tables tells you a lot about them. Trust me.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
You mentioned one thing that I will tell you in my coaching. When people are behavioral, it kills them not to be loved. But you have to explain them. You have to make a decision. Everybody's not going to love it. You have to do that. And that's one of the hardest barriers for them to get over. Kristin, go ahead and take us through analytical since you have, since that was yours.
I will. And real quick, I have to share with you, I talk with my hands a lot. So I was at a meeting, at lunch with colleagues a few years ago. And I asked her, we had gotten ribs. And when I asked if she had like hand wipes, obviously your hands get messy. You can't, and if you're listening, you can't see what I'm doing. But I actually, when I asked for it, acted as if I was wiping my hands on a hand wipe, right? And I didn't even realize I did that. And so think of yourself using a napkin or something. So I literally did that while I said, do you have any of those wet wipes?
You were signaling.
And I was signaling. And my colleague, he's hysterical. And he goes, man, I'd really like to see you order milk. And he did the hand signal like he was like milking a cow, like udders. And I thought that was so hysterical. I'm like, gosh, you never know. One, I'd never order milk at a restaurant, but two, that is hysterical. And who knows how I'd actually order it. Okay. Analytic style of decision making. So the pros are they're data driven. They make evidence-based decisions. They can be a perfectionist. We have that in a pro here. That can be a con, in my opinion. That's that analysis to paralysis piece there. They consider variables. They are outcome driven, and they often make the right decision. The cons, they can have trouble making quick decisions. They struggle making decisions without significant data, and they may waste valuable time, theirs and yours, and they may accept data despite the employee morale.
Kristin, let me jump in.
Yeah.
This was my fault, not Kristin's, but perfectionist is supposed to be a con, not a pro.
Okay. Yeah. I was like, my gut instinct told me probably not the best thing to advertise as a pro.
Yeah. No, it's true.
All right. Good. I appreciate that. Makes a lot more sense now. But their call to action would be they need to practice making some decisions based on their experience and gut instinct, and to consider both employee morale and data when making decisions, and recognize that perfection is not always attainable. Yeah,
that's good stuff.
That's big.
So, Kristin, we've covered a lot, so we will kind of slide through at the end. But I wanted to encourage when I do this training, there's some tabletop exercises, and one of the things that people waste, and tell me if you do this, Kristin, is choosing a movie. One night I was with family members, I think my sister, brother-in-law, and a few more. We were visiting them in Virginia. We went through movies. I promise you, we probably could have watched half a movie deciding on a movie. So there is some very small ways, everything from grocery shopping to picking a movie to picking a restaurant. Just start to be a little more decisive. Now, use your pleasantries and things like that, and also make decisions that you're not going to be a part of a problem, or you're not going to create a problem, like office gossip, those kind of things. You can make a decision that I've got boundaries, I've got values, and I'm not going to engage in that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
In big purchases, things that's going to impact the family, think about it. Think about who's going. This is going to impact, and control those impulses. I guarantee you, if you learn to make solid decisions, that you're going to be, as we say, healthier, wealthier, and wise. Mm-hmm. But everything that Kristin and I have talked about here, it may sound complicated, but the biggest thing that we wanted you to do is start thinking about decisions. remember what I said when I first started? I asked someone, how did you decide to do that? They go, I don't know. I
Right.
guarantee you the next time you go to the if you have listened to this full podcast, the next time you go to the grocery store or you're deciding on dinner or you're deciding what to wear, you're going to be able to do that with a lot less stress. You're going to be able to make a decision. Now, if you decide a restaurant and somebody wants something else, you need to decide also, is this worth me arguing? Can I eat at that other place? Because a lot of this is designed to just make life better for you. But if you want to get promoted, if you want to do well at work, sometimes you need to be decisive. People look to you. Don't undersell yourself. I've had people that are afraid to give their opinion. An opinion's a decision. You speak up when you need to. If you know something, speak up. And there's some powerful decisions that you can make right now. And that is, you can decide that I'm going to do great things. I'm going to thrive. I'm going to be better off financially in a few months than I am right now. I'm going to make a decision to mentor, or I'm going to help someone less privileged. These are decisions that's going to leave you a legacy. And when you mold all this together, again, we dropped a lot of data on you. Get to know yourself and get to know the type of decision maker you are, and then start to work on those cons and those call to actions so that you can improve. What do you take away from this, Kristin?
Yeah, no, it's huge. Just really that you can change. You can make small changes and really start designing who you want to be in the future, and just start with the baby steps. You don't have to make, a 180 here. Just start making little changes on how you make decisions, and they will add up. It's the small stuff. It really adds up, and you're going to see a positive impact.
Yeah, so work on that DMP.
Oh, yeah. You know me.
All right. And be the leader you're meant to be. We didn't mean for that to rhyme. Work on your DMP and be the leader you're meant to be.
Yeah. We'll see you next week.
The Dirty Side of Leadership podcast is brought to you by Forward Operations. If you'd like to book Ron or Kristin for speaking events, training, or executive coaching, visit forwardoperations.com. Be the leader you're meant to be.